It turns out New York City, home of pizza slices bigger than your head and apartment prices that make you cry, has decided to start giving migrants the boot. Yep, the Big Apple is getting a little too big to handle. Now, I'm sure you've heard the headlines, but let's break it down with some real numbers, shall we? New York has been welcoming hundreds of migrants every single day. The exact number of daily arrivals varies, but it is evident that the crisis continues to put a heavy burden on the city's infrastructure and finances. And while the city has been known for its "give me your tired, your poor" spirit, even the Statue of Liberty might be sweating right now. With the city spending millions per day on migrant services, the costs are hitting hard. So what's the deal? Why is New York starting to show migrants the door? Well, buckle up, because we're about to count down the top 10 reasons the city is telling people to pack their bags. Let's get started. Number 10, the housing crunch. New York City, the land where apartments the size of closets cost a small fortune. So, what's the first reason migrants are getting the boot? Housing. Surprise, surprise. The city's always had a problem with affordable housing, if you can call $3,000 a month for a one-bedroom affordable. But now, with an influx of migrants, that crunch has gotten worse. In fact, as of last year, NYC was short by an estimated 500,000 affordable housing units. You heard that right. 500,000. That's almost the entire population of Wyoming. So, the city's logic here? If you can't house your own residents, why keep adding to the pile? Makes sense, right? Well, sorta. Number 9, overwhelmed shelter system. Now, housing isn't the only issue. Let's talk shelters. New York's shelter system, which was already stretched thin, has been inundated with migrants. Imagine being a system designed for X number of people and suddenly handling twice that number. Kind of like inviting 10 friends to dinner, and then they all bring their cousins. Last year, New York's shelters saw a 30% increase in capacity needs. 30%, people. That's like throwing a party with 100 people, and then 130 show up. Except, it's not a party, and no one brought chips. So naturally, New York had to start making some tough decisions about who stays and who goes. Number 8, the mayor's office steps in. Then there's the mayor, Mr. Eric Adams himself. Adams has been vocal about how the influx of migrants is affecting the city. He said the city's resources are being strained and that something has to give. In one of his press conferences, he mentioned that the city simply cannot handle this on its own. So, what's his solution? Apparently a relocation plan. That's right. The Big Apple is basically telling people to take a bite out of somewhere else. Number 7, budget woes. Now let's talk about everyone's favorite topic. Money. New York is expensive. Shocker, I know. And all those services, shelters, food programs, healthcare, they cost big bucks. Last year alone, New York City spent over $2 billion on services for migrants. Yep, that's billion with a B. And while that might sound like monopoly money to some of you, for New York, it's real, and they're feeling it. The city's got budget issues, and guess what? Migrants are being blamed for making things worse. So in a move that's less Statue of Liberty and more Statue of Limitations, the city's cutting down on who gets access to these services. Number 6, the hotel deals. You know what's wild? The city actually tried housing migrants in, wait for it, hotels. No, not the sketchy motels you avoid on road trips. We're talking about legit, fancy hotels. Apparently, over 40 hotels in Manhattan were used as temporary housing for migrants last year. Sounds nice, right? Except it turns out that strategy didn't quite work. Between the costs of maintaining these spaces and, get this, hotel guests complaining about shared spaces, the plan kind of flopped. Who knew people weren't thrilled about paying $300 a night to bump into strangers in the lobby? Number 5, upstate relocations. So New York City had another idea. What if they sent migrants to upstate New York? Because, upstate is quieter, has more space, and less to complain about, right? Turns out, not everyone upstate was thrilled about this plan. Several counties actually sued the city to stop the relocations. And while NYC said it was just a temporary solution, the locals were like, no thanks, we're good. Apparently, even rural New York has its limits. Number 4, clash with the feds. And then there's the whole federal versus local government dance. NYC has been asking for federal help. Because, let's be real, dealing with this on a city level is kind of like trying to stop a flood with a coffee cup. But the federal response has been, well, let's just say less than ideal. In fact, there's been a lot of finger-pointing between the city and Washington, D.C., each blaming the other for dropping the ball. It's like watching a game of hot potato, except instead of a potato, it's a humanitarian crisis. Number 3. Legal battles galore. Speaking of lawsuits, the legal drama doesn't end with Upstate. There are also organizations and advocates suing the city over its treatment of migrants. From overcrowded shelters to alleged human rights violations, the courts have been busy. Because nothing says welcome quite like a stack of legal paperwork. It's like, hey, we can't house you, but here's a court summons. Number 2. The Great Divide. But it's not just the government that's divided. Regular New Yorkers? They're split on the issue too. Some folks are all about helping the migrants, arguing that New York has always been a city of immigrants. Others, not so much. They're more concerned about how this is impacting their neighborhoods, jobs, and resources. Basically, New York has become a living, breathing example of not in my backyard. And honestly, you can't talk about this issue without mentioning the rising tensions within the city itself. Number 1. The real question. What now? So, here we are. New York has started kicking migrants out, or at least that's what it seems like. But the real question is, what happens next? Will this problem just get worse, or can the city find a better solution? Because let's be real, simply telling people to leave isn't solving the root problem. It's like putting a Band-Aid on a leaky faucet and calling it a day. So, what's the future of migration in New York? Only time will tell. All right, that's it for today's video. What do you think about New York's handling of this situation? Have you been following the story? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want more content like this. And hey, if you've got an opinion on what NYC should do next, share it with us. Until next time, stay informed, stay curious, and stay kind, folks.